Let me ask you something that most people never stop to consider. What's the real reason you feel stuck? Why does it seem like no matter how hard you work, the results don't feel permanent? You start things, get excited, feel a spark of progress, but weeks or months later, you're back at the same point or worse, behind where you started. That's not laziness. It's not a lack of talent or ambition. It's something far more common, far more subtle, and far more dangerous. You're thinking in the short term. In this video, I'm going to teach you a mental shift that changed my life and the lives of thousands of high performers I've mentored. You're going to learn how to think like a long-term strategist, but move like a short-term executor. You'll understand how to create a 10-year vision while taking 24-hour action, and why mastering this duality is the fastest, most reliable path to extraordinary success. Because here's the truth, most people never hear. Thinking long-term without acting now is procrastination in disguise. But acting urgently without a clear long-term vision is burnout in motion. You need both, and you need to balance them with precision. That's what separates the overwhelmed from the unstoppable. You see, the world trains us to be reactive. Everything is urgent, everything is now, everything is fast. And while speed has value, speed without direction is chaos. You can run 100 miles an hour straight into a wall. And most people do because they're obsessed with now and terrified of later. But let me tell you something I've learned over 4 decades of building businesses, training leaders, and living this philosophy in my own life. Long-term thinking is the single most powerful multiplier of success. It changes how you invest your time. It changes who you surround yourself with. It changes how you handle setbacks. And most importantly, it changes how you see yourself. When you start thinking in decades instead of days, something incredible happens. You stop needing to win every battle. You start focusing on winning the war. You stop obsessing over the approval of others. You start aligning with your purpose. You stop rushing, and you start moving with power. But there's a catch. Long-term thinking alone isn't enough. If you just sit and plan, sit and visualize, sit and dream, nothing changes. You become the person with potential and no execution. And potential without urgency is a life half lived. That's where acting with urgency comes in. That's what brings the dream to life. I've seen too many brilliant people build vision boards and write 10-year goals only to delay the first step until they feel ready. But life doesn't reward the well-planned. It rewards the well-executed, and the most successful people I know act as if time is running out even when the vision is far away. They don't wait to be ready. They move, they initiate, they experiment, they fail fast, and they learn. Because they know that every small action compounds. Every step taken now plants seeds that grow later. And if you wait too long to plant, you'll be harvesting regret while others are harvesting results. That's the game. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how to play it. I'll teach you how to create long-term clarity, pair it with short-term urgency, and move through your life like a leader who sees the full picture but acts with unstoppable focus today. Let's begin. There's a specific mental model that changed the way I work, live, and make decisions. I call it the duality of greatness. And it goes like this. Think like a philosopher. Act like a warrior. In other words, build your life around timeless principles, but move every day like the clock is ticking because it is. The greatest leaders, wealth builders, and visionaries I've ever studied all had this in common. They had long-term patience and short-term intensity. They played the long game, but they moved like every day mattered. That's not an accident, that's a decision. And if you want to build something extraordinary, you need to live inside that tension every single day. Let me break it down for you. Long-term thinking is about defining the future. It's the ability to zoom out, to imagine who you want to be 5, 10, even 20 years from now. It's asking the hard questions. What do I want my life to look like when no one's watching? What impact do I want to leave behind? What kind of habits, systems, and environments will support that version of me? But here's where most people get stuck. They create that vision And then they wait. They wait for the mood, the perfect time, the right opportunity. And in the waiting, they lose their edge. That's why acting with urgency is your greatest competitive advantage. Urgency isn't panic. It's not chaos. It's a mindset that says, if this matters in 5 years, it matters right now. It's waking up and moving with purpose, not pressure. It's showing up to your life and not just mentally, but physically, emotionally, and strategically. Urgency is setting the meeting, making the call, recording the video, writing the proposal, launching the thing. It's imperfect action today, not theoretical perfection tomorrow. And the people who win consistently are the ones who understand this. Execution beats intention every single time. Think of it like this. Long-term thinking gives you the compass, but urgency gives you the fuel. Without the compass, you're fast but lost. Without the fuel, you're wise but still. You need both. You need vision that makes you proud and action that makes it real. I've seen entrepreneurs who had incredible ideas that could have changed industries. But they sat on them. They let fear slow them down. They polished their plans until the moment passed. And I've seen others, less talented, less resourced, less ready, who moved with urgency. And you know what happened? They won. Not because they were better, but because they were faster, more willing to start. That's the world we live in now. Speed matters. Not recklessness, but momentum. The ability to take what you know, what you see, and move today. While others hesitate, you build. While others gather information, you gather experience. That's how you become untouchable. Now, I want to make this practical for you. Ask yourself this question every morning. What is one move I can make today that serves my 5-year vision? Not 10, just one. Something bold, specific, and measurable. Do that, and your days stop being random. Your calendar stops being noise. You start stacking action on top of clarity, and that's how you build something that lasts. This is the mindset I live by. It's the one I teach to every leader, every team, every person who's tired of watching other people succeed while they stay stuck in planning mode. Think long term. Act with urgency. And watch what happens. There's a hidden benefit to this mindset that most people miss, and once you understand it, it changes everything. When you act with urgency, you start to see yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who thinks about success, and you start becoming someone who moves like success is already inevitable. Let me explain. The moment you stop postponing and start executing even in small ways, your brain starts building a new self-image. It says, this is who I am now. I take action. I don't wait. I build. And every time you repeat that, your confidence grows. Not the fake kind of confidence that depends on other people's approval. I'm talking about the deep internal knowing that says, if I say I'll do something, I'll do it. Period. That identity shift is priceless. Because the person who thinks long-term but never moves becomes the person with regret, the one who waits for clarity forever, the one who watches others pass by with less talent, less preparation, but more courage. I don't want that for you. You deserve better than that. And you don't need a perfect plan to get there. You just need to start behaving like the future version of yourself right now. That's how habits are formed. Not through pressure, through repetition. You don't need to feel ready. You need to feel responsible for your vision, your goals, your next step. And when you treat every small task like a piece of something bigger, that's when momentum kicks in. I've said this for years. Successful people form the habit of doing the things unsuccessful people don't feel like doing. It's not about passion every day. It's about discipline fueled by purpose. It's about remembering where you're going and taking step 7 when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one's watching. That's what urgency looks like. Not chaos, not running frantically from task to task, but choosing your moves with clarity and executing them like time matters. Because it does. Every day you hesitate, someone else makes the move you're avoiding. Every hour you spend thinking it through, Someone else sends the proposal, launches the product, starts the habit, or closes the deal. And while you're still thinking, they're already building. This isn't a race, but it is real. You can't build a meaningful life on intention alone. You need movement. Let me give you an example from my own life. Early in my career, I knew I wanted to write books, but I kept pushing it aside. I told myself I needed more time, more experience, more certainty. But nothing changed until I made a simple decision. I'll write 1 page a day. That's it, 1 page. No excuses, no delays, just action. That small habit created my first book, then the second, then dozens more. Not because I was better, but because I moved. Because I acted with urgency while holding a long-term goal in mind. That's what you need to do. Find your version of 1 page a day and start. Today, the identity you want to build is not the person who will someday. It's the person who already does. The person who shows up, follows through, and stacks small wins until the big ones can't help but appear. So ask yourself, what would the future version of me start doing today? What would they no longer tolerate? How would they move, decide, and act if the results already belong to them? Then do that, not tomorrow. Now, one of the most painful patterns I see in ambitious people is this. They overthink every move. They spend hours, days, even years analyzing paths they never take. And you know what that does? It destroys momentum. It drains energy. It replaces progress with anxiety. And all of that stems from one root cause, a fear of getting it wrong. But here's the truth. Long-term thinkers who succeed don't avoid mistakes. They just move through them faster. They understand that clarity is not something you wait for, it's something you earn through action. The best decisions are rarely made with 100% certainty. They're made with commitment, feedback, and course correction. And the only way to get that feedback is to move. Acting with urgency doesn't mean you skip strategy. It means you decide quickly and cleanly based on what you know right now, and you adjust as new data emerges. That's what high-level execution looks like. Not perfection, not paralysis, just forward motion grounded in tension. Let me say this clearly. The cost of indecision is almost always higher than the cost of a wrong step. A wrong step gives you experience. Indecision gives you nothing but wasted time and self-doubt. People love to romanticize clarity. They think the perfect moment will arrive the day when the clouds part, the doubt disappears, and everything feels easy. That moment doesn't exist. What does exist is a habit of moving, even when it's uncomfortable. And here's what's fascinating. The more urgent your actions become, the more long-term your thinking becomes by default. Why? Because when you make decisions quickly, you create time. Time to reflect, refine, and realign. You're no longer stuck in your head. You're moving, iterating, evolving, and that's where real progress lives. I've built entire businesses on this principle. I've coached executives who doubled their output not by working more, but by removing the drag of indecision, by simplifying their decision process into 3 steps. What's the long-term outcome I want? What's the best move I can make today with what I know? What's the smallest version of that move I can do now? That's it. Vision, action, execution. You don't need a 5-hour planning session. You need 5 minutes of clarity and the courage to move. If you repeat that every day, you'll outpace people who've been getting ready for years. But here's the best part. When you start moving with urgency, something shifts emotionally too. You stop obsessing over outcomes and start falling in love with progress. You stop measuring your worth by how perfect your plan is and start measuring it by how consistent your action is. You become someone others can trust. Someone who doesn't just talk about change, but creates it. Someone who doesn't just dream, but delivers. That's how you build resilience. That's how you develop presence. That's how you grow into someone who plays the long game and wins it. So let me ask you, where in your life are you waiting for clarity when you should be creating it? What decision are you postponing out of fear, even though deep down you already know what to do? What bold move, if taken today, would create weeks or years of momentum? Answer those questions, then act. Because if the outcome matters in 10 years, it matters today. And you don't need another opinion. You need movement. There's something powerful that happens when you stop treating your goals like ideas and start treating them like obligations. When you stop flirting with your potential and finally marry it, that's the day your life starts compounding. Not because you suddenly work harder, but because you start living as if the future truly depends on what you do now. And it does. Every choice you make today is casting a vote for the person you become tomorrow. When you think long term but act with urgency, you begin to live with that deep inner fire that says, what I do today matters. Not just for me, but for everyone I'll lead, serve, or love in the future. That's legacy thinking, and it changes everything. When I began living this way, everything sharpened. I stopped spending time with people who had no direction. I stopped accepting opportunities that didn't align with my long-term mission. I stopped tolerating delays that came from fear disguised as planning, and most importantly, I started feeling more peace. That's what no one tells you about urgency. It brings peace, not pressure. Because the real stress doesn't come from doing hard things, it comes from avoiding them. From carrying 30 unfinished tasks in your mind, knowing you're out of alignment with your purpose, from knowing what needs to be done, and watching yourself avoid it anyway. But when you simplify, commit, and move, you create space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to feel proud at the end of the day, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. And people feel that in you. They see that you're different. They feel safer around you because you're not reactive, distracted, or pulled in 100 directions. You're focused. You're intentional. You're building something that lasts. That's what thinking long-term with daily urgency does. It elevates your presence. You become the kind of person who doesn't just chase progress, but embodies it. Others talk about goals. You live them. Others get excited. You get consistent. Others hope. You execute. And over time, that becomes your reputation. People come to you for clarity, for direction, for leadership. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're actually moving. And the more you live this way, the more obvious the path becomes. You stop second guessing. You stop bouncing from idea to idea. You build rhythm. You learn to trust the small things. Again, waking up early, making the call, staying calm when it would be easier to quit. Because you know now, this is how the future is built. Brick by brick, day by day. With urgency today and vision for tomorrow, that's the rhythm you want. That's the identity that wins. So if you've ever felt behind, stuck, or unsure, it's not because you're broken. It's because you've been looking at the game the wrong way. It's not about crushing yourself with more pressure. It's about realigning with what matters, then acting on it now. The future isn't some distant dream. It's a reflection of today's urgency. And every decision you make is shaping it right now. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Success is not an accident. It's a system. And the most effective system I've ever followed is this. Think like everything you do echoes into the next decade. Act like today is your last chance to make it count. When you live that way, everything changes. You stop chasing hacks. You stop looking for motivation. You stop bouncing between strategies. Because now, everything you do serves one thing, the long game. And your actions no longer come from impulse, they come from design, from structure, from inner commitment. That's how I built my career. That's how I wrote over 80 books. That's how I trained millions of people around the world. Not through flashes of inspiration, but through a repeatable process built on vision and urgency. Let me show you how that system looks in real life. It starts the night before. Before I go to sleep, I write down 3 priorities. Not 15, not a to-do list full of noise, just 3 actions that will move the needle on my long-term goals. Then I commit, no matter how I feel in the morning, those 3 things get done. I don't wait for motivation. I don't wait to be in the right energy. I lead myself. I move with discipline because I don't serve my feelings, I serve my future. That mindset bleeds into everything. My calendar is blocked by purpose, not by availability. My phone is off when I work. My environment is clean because clutter creates friction, and friction kills speed. I eat in a way that fuels clarity, not just comfort. I train my body to be resilient, not for aesthetics, but for performance. I say no more often than yes, not to be rude, but to stay in alignment. This isn't about perfection. It's about intention backed by movement. Because once you've tasted what it's like to wake up with purpose and end the day with progress, you'll never want to go back to drifting. You'll never again be okay with wasting time. You'll never again live on autopilot. That's why I say urgency is freedom. It frees you from indecision. It frees you from distraction. It frees you from the invisible weight of knowing you're capable of more but doing less. And when you connect that urgency with a long-term vision, something powerful happens. You start building a life you actually respect. You don't just hope for peace. You create it through discipline. You don't just wish for wealth. You earn it through consistency. You don't just dream of influence. You become someone worth following because you lead yourself first. That's the real power. Not controlling others, but controlling your next step. Over and over again, until momentum does the rest. So what does this mean for you? It means your days are no longer random. Your focus is no longer fragile. Your success is no longer optional. Because you've decided. You've decided to show up like the future matters. You've decided to act before you feel ready. You've decided to run your system even when it's hard. And that's when everything changes. Not all at once, but consistently. Not overnight, but inevitably. That's the system. And now, it's yours. Here's something no one tells you. When you decide to think long-term and move with urgency, you will intimidate people. You'll make others uncomfortable, no, because you're aggressive, but because you're clear. While they're distracted, you're building. While they're explaining why they're stuck, you're taking the next step. While they chase dopamine, you're stacking discipline. And they won't always know how to respond to that. So they'll say things like, "You've changed. Why are you always working? Can't you relax?" But what they're really saying is, "Your clarity makes me confront my own avoidance." Don't take that personally. Don't slow down to make others feel better. Don't shrink your discipline to fit someone else's indecision. Because here's the truth. The stronger your vision, the more resistance you'll feel from the outside world. That's a sign you're doing something right. Thinking long-term is not trendy. It's not sexy. It doesn't get applause. People celebrate quick wins, but they rarely understand the deep work behind real ones. That's why you must protect your Pathivan when no one's cheering. Urgency isn't just something you do when you're inspired. It's something you carry even when you're misunderstood. And you will be misunderstood. People won't always see the vision. That's fine. They don't need to. Because you're not building a life to be understood. You're building it to be effective. Every time you say no to distraction, you're saying yes to mastery. Every time you choose early mornings over late regrets, you're moving further than you think. Every time you finish the hard task first, you separate yourself from 99% of people who never follow through. That's the price of clarity. That's the weight of urgency. But that's also the reward. A life that actually works. Not just one that looks good on social media. Not one that's fueled by validation or trend hopping, but a real life. Quiet, focused, effective, free. The kind of life where you wake up and know why you're here. The kind of day where the first hour is yours, not the world's. The kind of momentum that builds year after year because you never stop moving. And here's what's even more important. You become the example. You become the person others look at and say, how do they stay so focused? How do they move like that? How do they keep growing while I'm stuck? You don't need to answer. Your results will. Your peace will. Your clarity will. Because urgency, practiced long enough, becomes who you are. It rewires how you speak, how you act, how you think, and that identity, that internal fire, becomes your protection from everything trying to pull you back into the average. So if people don't get it, let them talk. If your progress makes them uncomfortable, let it. You're not here to fit in. You're here to lead yourself. First, always. And the longer you walk this path, the more you'll realize you were never building a plan. You were becoming the kind of person who doesn't need one to start. At some point, you have to make a decision that sticks, not a moment of hype, not a flash of motivation, but a quiet internal contract. One that says, I will no longer postpone the life I was meant to live. You've spent too many days in hesitation, too many mornings bargaining with your potential, too many nights convincing yourself you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And truthfully, it's not even the point. The point is today. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Because it's what you control. Because the version of you that exists 5 or 10 years from now, they're begging you silently to move. Not later. Now, that future version of you already knows what life looks like when you finally stop negotiating with distraction. They know the power of focus, the joy of momentum, the pride of stacking quiet wins when no one's watching, and the only thing standing between that version of you and the one you are today is action. And not just any action. Urgent action driven by long-term vision. That's the combination. That's the formula. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to decide that enough is enough. That one more day of drifting costs too much. That your legacy doesn't start when the money comes in. It starts when the discipline locks in. Because legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build daily. Every focused hour, every hard conversation, every no to the trivial and yes to the essential. That's legacy in motion. That's urgency with a purpose. That's how you stop feeling low stand, start living like a leader. And here's the final truth I'll leave you with. Thinking long-term is how you create peace. Acting with urgency is how you protect it. One gives you clarity, the other gives you power. Together, they make you unstoppable. So starting today, you walk different, you move different, you lead your time, you own your results, and every step you take whispers one thing to the world: I'm no longer waiting. You've got the vision. Now bring the velocity. Let's build the life that makes your future prudent, urgent day at a time.